And welcome back to another episode of the Indy Investor Pod, brought to you by Cyria. I got Dave and Sterling back with me again today, and today we're going to talk all about flipping properties around Indianapolis. So super excited to have these guys on with me here again today. So Indianapolis is great investor community, and that's what we like to do here. This is all about community, all about helping each other out. That's what this podcast is about, and hopefully we can help you out here today. And with that, let's get on with the show. All right, and welcome back to another episode of the Indy Investor Pod. I got Dave Short and Sterling Davis here with me again today as we have this episode brought to you by just the Real Talk crew, is what we like to call ourselves, from a radio show that we used to do with Cyria. And we did an episode a couple weeks ago with where we focused on kind of my specialty of wholesaling. We did one on Sterling's specialty of property management. Now we got Dave Short. We get to pick his brain today all about flipping properties around Indianapolis. So Dave, let's just jump into it, man. What do you have to say just about the flipping market and kind of what's going on here in Indianapolis, man?
Well, I'm going to give the viewers, our listeners, a podcast. I'm a bigger pockets guy, and listen to all their podcasts because they tend to have information that's appropriate for the times. And podcast 381 is what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. And the reason this podcast is so good, it's a guy, I think, out of Portland. And, but I noticed that I was doing this in our flipping, not necessarily knowing why I was doing it. But he gives several key points that, I kind of want to go over with everybody. And then you guys can kind of quiz me on some of the stuff because it's kind of how we're trying to do our business today.
Yeah, man, I love it.
One of the things is dial back the high-end properties or new construction. And the reason he goes there is it's time. Everything's about time because of the kind of times we're in. We thought we were with the virus, and now we have our issues, with a police officer, killing an individual. So now that's another thing that we have to deal with, and it's hurt our downtown. It's hurt other areas of downtown around. So timing is everything. And then when you're doing a flip, speed will be your best friend. Is getting something in, getting it done, and getting it on the market quickly. We've adapted that. We've done 3 flips here in the last 90 days that we've got to market in 30 to 45 days. And we normally, we haven't met those kind of time frames, but I've just hammered on my individual. And, I don't care how many jobs you work as long as you're on my job every day getting it done. So speed is a key. Don't attack necessarily the older homes. Older homes are harder to fix. They have they basically create time. Quite honestly, most contractors don't know how to bid that job either. They don't know what electrical costs. I don't know, and I've done a lot of them, but they're so different. So your costs, I've done a couple older houses lately, and my costs have been 70% more than what we thought budget would be on these houses.
Yeah. You're always going to find something. You can't see it when you're doing your walkthrough and stuff. Yeah.
The contingency seems to be gone in day 2, once you get the walls down. Stay at a median price point in Indianapolis. That's where all the buyers are today. Understand and the things that we would have taken, 4 months ago or 5 months ago will look past now or really want to adjust because pricing. Things such as the condition going in. Is it on a busy road? Is it what we call a challenged house? It backs up to power lines. Or, the foundation is a little rougher than we would like to do. Both is on both sides of your house, are they a wreck? Now these things, when we're in a different kind of market, start to play back in to what we're looking at, because they might take a house 6 months ago that has two crappy houses on each side. And well, today they may look the other way on that particular house. You need to, I call it underwriting skills. If you're getting a new loan, there's an underwriter that looks at everything about your package before they give you a loan. So we look at underwriting skills on the house, whether we take the house or want to do the house. And the underwriting skills are, the area and the location, how's it situated in the area. Perfect example. I consider Bates Hendricks, which is a hot neighborhood. Bates Hendricks has at least 3 subgroups of houses. There's streets that I don't want to be on. I don't want to be in Bates Hendricks west of East Street. And I don't want to be, in the area where there's not at least 5 or 6 flips going on. I don't want to be the pioneer in a subgroup even, because the price point won't get up. I look at best pricing versus worst pricing. 6 months ago, I looked at, okay, what's the most I can get for this on it? And now, I want to look at worst pricing. And part of worst pricing is more important is the higher price point that you get in trying to buy these houses. So if you're going to be at $400,000 or $500,000, I've got 2 big flips. They're gorgeous. They're priced what I think at the market. Well, I didn't look at worst pricing on these flips. And now, because I'm getting no activity, I have to start looking at worst pricing. Where had I looked at worst pricing, my acquisition cost would have been better than they were on these particular properties.
Yeah,
Makes
Dave,
sense?
are you saying that's something that you moved into more of, like, just since COVID hit and like kind of more of that time frame now?
Well, I've had to consider, because of the price point of the house, yeah. Now I have to go back and consider worst pricing scenarios. Okay, what can I take to get out of this house?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And we're in the mid price point, and I can give you the example of our last 2 flips. In that mid price point, we put them on the market at an aggressive price. I mean, we had one in Farley's Edition. It's a great West Side community. Well, we bought that house really right, and I looked at my worst price scenario in that house at 139.9 to 142 or 143. So I based all of my numbers on that. The market's still hot. I told Brian, my realtor, my son, I said, let's try 149.9 because the market's so hot, or let's go to 154.9. And my target was still 144, 145. So we went to 154.9. We put the house on the market on Saturday at 9 o'clock. And that Saturday, we had 19 showings, 7 offers, all over full price.
Wow.
But it's the mid price point.
Yep.
It's like, okay, it's a lot more fun dealing with this than it is my $480,000 house in Bates Hendricks. That is by far the best house for sale in Bates or Fountain Square for the money. Mm-hmm. But I'm getting no activity on it.
Yeah, right.
So now I have to look at worst price scenario.
Well, I think if anybody, so Dave does the subgroup, part of Central Indiana Real Estate Investor Association, CIREA. And if you've never participated, and I have to be honest, before the virus, I've never gone to a dinners with Dave. And I regret it because I didn't get no pizza, Dave.
But that pizza last week.
Yeah. So the beauty, like so I've been to like 4 of them now. And I love your approach of looking at properties, Dave. Like inside of this, he breaks down not only the worst case scenario versus he breaks down the different options that he will do with a property. Mostly 2 to 3 times, you will give 2 to 3 different approaches from, all right, I can do a mid-grade flip here. I can do a higher grade flip. Where does that kind of come from, Dave? Like, where does that, did you get burned looking at it singular one time, or like, where does that kind of derive from?
Well, I think one of it was I've been very, very blessed. I have a really good network because people, I'll say know, like, and trust me. A lot of people might take that like out of it, but they know me and they trust me on it. So I get opportunities. So sometimes when you close a house and you can't get your contractors there for a month, well, if I paid $60,000 or $80,000 for that house, and I have my money in my rehab, it might cost me $1,200 a month to hold that house. So now I didn't buy it at 80. I bought it at 81.2. And if it goes another month, I paid $83,000 for the house. So we started to look at strategies that, okay, if I can get half my profit that I would do taking the house to the completion, then I'll look at different strategies. And we've made really good money. Brian calls it wholetailing. I call it prehabbing, where I'll go in and take the difficult things out of it. I'll do the difficult things that people don't have a handle on pricing. Like I may take an older house in a Meridian Kessler, and maybe I bought it really right because the house is really awful. But I'll go in and I'll put hardy siding on it, and I'll put windows in it, and I'll do the electrical. So I've taken all the hard stuff that they don't know how to cost and price, where now it's a legitimate flip for somebody that's doing their second or third or fourth flip. So that's a wholetailing thing. Where another one, we bought one in a really prime neighborhood that we're going to look at a serious strategy of wholesaling the property because of where it's at and what the end value is. But I got it at a really good price, at least I think I did, that I think I can maybe turn this house with doing minimal amount of work rather than taking the strategy, I don't want to be in this house 6 months. My old strategy, I'd be in this house 6 months, and our new strategy, we'll have it done in 90 to no more than 120 days. Because we just, I've got the contractors, hey, if you want to do business with it, you need to be focused on it. And contractors are hard like anybody else to be focused. But now we're looking at buying it only the worst price scenario versus the best price scenario on it. So, and it's made a big difference in our flipping strategy that we've done. And you know what? If you get it done quicker, it's amazing how better you have a hold on your cost.
Yep.
It's amazing. I mean, I can't emphasize that enough. Yeah. If you're picking and choosing and getting somebody in there but your cost to complete will be 10-15% less if you have a short time fuse.
Yeah, and it's amazing what that does for you, just like eliminating those types of properties from your process. That's something we, as all this stuff have come down, and you're saying now that you're kind of focused more on, you're like, hey, kind of what's the least we can definitely make on this, and we feel comfortable with it. Whereas like kind of right away of like, okay, how do we need to adjust our numbers that we're buying, when we're wholesaling and stuff like that? We're like, hey, right away, let's eliminate like just the huge rehab projects. Like people are not going to take those on right now. Let's just kind of get those off. It was kind of amazing of like what that did of just that easy of like, oh, this one's a huge rehab process. We're not even going to look at it and just let it go versus spending, a couple hours assessing it and, putting all that work into it and stuff like that. So I see from your standpoint of like, man, that probably just alleviates kind of the pressure of those situations, but also just the time that frees up of like, hey, you can really just focus on this and narrow down and really just get what you want for these properties as well.
Yeah, well, I've looked at a lot of wholesale deals lately that, we're going to look at a couple. I think it's really thin margins, but I know they're 30-day deals.
Mm-hmm.
I can be in and out. I mean, we did one last week in the northwest side of town. We got it done in 2.5 weeks. I mean, we put new windows in, new countertops, new baths, new paint, new carpet, and we were 2.5 weeks. We was out of that house.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Dave, I get calls all the time. A lot of out-of-state people, and they say, "Hey, I want to flip," and I'm like, "I don't flip." Like so, but they always say this. It's the same scenario. It's like I want to be 100,000 all in, and I want to make X, Y, and Z. Like, is there still a market there for like that 100,000 all in?
Well, it's kind of one of the things I was going to talk about today. You know, I think there is. We're doing a couple right now as trial, for lack of a better term, a trial. We're going into areas we've got one house that's been a predominantly rental neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that I think there's an opportunity there is that we bought a house, the quick scenario of this particular house, we bought a house for $32,000. It was in pretty good shape, small house, but it's in an area that's kind of, it's fairly clean, but it's predominantly rental. So what we're looking at, we can make this house better than rent ready, and we'll spend about $15,000 on the house. So we'll be all in at $47,000. Our strategy is, and as a rental, it's probably a $750,000, but our strategy is we're going to list this house at probably $69,900 and try to make $15,000 on an all-in house at $47,000, that's my target if I'm all in at 100 to 110. So I'm going to see if that strategy works. I think a turnkey provider may even buy it at that, at my 69.9 number. But here's my big thing why I think it will work. If somebody buys this house, 69.9, puts 3.5% down, their all-in payment is $450.
Yeah.
And they're having a nice rehabbed house with a 2-car garage,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all in for $450 a month. And if they were renting at 8, then what's that do to them? And so I think there's opportunity in those kinds of neighborhoods, only because out-of-state turnkey providers will pay close to those prices.
Yeah, they will
on a rented house.
I say Sterling's guys might be blowing up his phone here in a little bit once they hear that and stuff. So
right,
that sounds like a pretty opportunity. But
right.
Dave, let's kind of talk about that a little bit, of just like where you said like, hey, you're just looking to make like 15,000 on that. I think it's just the same thing kind of on all of our boards. We talked about it on the wholesaling show. Just some wholesalers' margin, they're just too big. They're trying to make too much money on every single deal. Some of Sterling's investors are maybe just they're all worried about like, hey, what's this cash? Like, I want the maximum cash flow as soon as I can, and they're focused on that. A lot of flippers that I come across, like they want to try to make like, hey, I'm not going to do a flip unless I can make like at least $40,000 on it. Like, how realistic is that? And then like, how many opportunities are missed by those people that are just like, hey, you can do some quick hitters and make a quick, 10, 20, something along there, and be just as successful as waiting for that one deal and that you might make 40 or 50 on.
Well, if I make 40 or 50 on a house, I normally have an investor involved in the deal a lot of times for financing or JVs and that kind of stuff. So, we've had 2 of those this year, that they were split. Well, they were in really prime neighborhoods, and the people even the flippers, the people that want to do this don't understand, because of timing, that they can get in there and what they really can get for this specific property. We bought one in Westfield, we paid $215 for it, and a couple of people just in my real estate office, man, how can you pay that much for that house and flip it? Well, I know what I can get it fixed for. I got it fixed for $45,000. I know what I can sell it for. I sold it for $335 first day on the market. So is it a thinner deal going in? Possibly, because if I was wrong and I'm at $299, then I don't make very much money. So it's knowing your cost, knowing what the end value is of the property. Then there's a few opportunities but you have to find those opportunities off market.
Yeah.
If that house is in the MLS, I got no shot at that house. So that becomes an off. You've got to find those transactions at off market.
Dave, talk to us a little bit. I know we were running short on time a little bit here, but what I started seeing was, so we have these areas like Arsenal Heights, State Street, right? And I had two investors do rehabs there, and I had one investor do a complete gut, and they made it top of the line, and we're getting top of the line rents, right? I had another investor did a rental grade, like a little above rental grade, right? And we're struggling to get the refi or sell it, and both of them are the same place. They're 4 units that you want to sell. But it seemed like because they didn't get over a certain threshold of like quality, it was just as bad as they didn't rehab it at all almost. Like, do you see like certain areas that have certain things that you're like, well, this area in Irvington, you have to be this class of level, or what are those characteristics with flipping?
Well, I think you have to look at market value, what residential homeowners are paying for those properties in the neighborhood. For instance, the Fountain Square, the State Street, and those kinds of neighborhoods. You know, your typical tenant in that neighborhood today is an owner-occupant grade tenant. So they're going to expect owner-occupant finishes. And they also understand that if they don't have owner-occupant finishes, the grade of tenant that's going to be in that building with them are, you know, going to be the hellraisers,
right,
and the people that are not going to take care and maintain the property and don't care that there's trash in the yard and all that stuff. So, you know, it's like the quality of the rehab. It directly affects the quality of the tenant that you're going to have in that specific property. Irvington is, you know, I think there's a lot of opportunity in Irvington if you can get past the historical society to do properties there at high-end grades. And the reason the high-end grades work in Irvington that might not work other places is there's a lot of tenant displacement in Irvington. You know, they're just moving around and need to be on the bus line. But there's also a lot of, you know, newer construction. So what we can do is find a middle ground on the higher end rents, meaning that the new construction in Irvington is going to be, you know, $1,000 a month for a, you know, 2 1.5, 800, you know, 700 square feet. And that's new construction. It has to be that because of the cost to build. But you buy one of the older units that say it's 8 or 10 unit, you can rehab that to the same quality as the new and bring in $850 a month in that unit and get the same quality of tenant, where across the street, it's a unit, they pay all the utilities, it's $550 a month, it's 400 square feet. They're going to get the transient tenant. And the good quality tenant is not going to move into that area, but he'll move into your house because he's looking down the street across from Giacomo's, and hey, I can't pay $1,050, and I've got the same product here at $850 when the next door unit, same size, same amenities, is $550. So the upgrades in those neighborhoods and that's a market that totally doesn't exist in Irvington right now.
Yeah,
is that mid-grade at the 800 a month.
You're right.
Yeah.
So,
Dave, I got a little bit of a loaded question for you. I know this is always a unique experience and stuff, but what advice do you have for people that are flipping and they need to make connections with contractors and just kind of build their team of contractors out? Like, what advice can you give to them?
Well, I think, you know, we continually turn over contractors, but not as much as most people. We have 3 or 4. The only time we turn them over is if we're backed up with property and have to hire somebody we don't know yet.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm a flipper, if I'm a relatively new flipper and I've got a project in Fountain Square, then I'll go to other job sites and see the contractor and talk with them. And, if they put a dormer on the house and they're framing it up, and, I'll ask them, I said, what'd you guys charge to put this dormer on this house? So now I know it's a $2,800 expense or a $4,500 expense.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you call one contractor, putting the dormer on, he didn't know anything, and he's $10,000. So, and you talk to those guys, and then, when you think you want to hire them or they're completely near the end of the job, I always track down the owner of those houses and say, hey, you happy with this guy? Did he perform? Was he on the job? I talk to the people that work for him. Is your boss on the job every day? Or is he, oh, hell, I haven't seen him for 2 weeks. Well, I don't hire that guy.
Right.
He immediately gets, oh, yeah, he's on the job every day and he swings a hammer. I mean, the perfect contractor is the guy that swings a hammer with the guys.
Mm-hmm.
Because he sees that as additional income from him. He's probably not necessarily looking at it right, but if he's there swinging the hammer, he's not about maximum markup on every job.
Yeah. So I know this is something that we kind of talked about on Sterling's property management episode, but we kind of mentioned hey, if you're gonna get a rental property in Beech Grove, make sure you're dealing with a property manager that works in Beech Grove and working in different areas. Have you seen that with contractors of like, hey, if I want to be in this area, this neighborhood, I'm going to work with this team or this crew. But if I'm over here on the west side, I'm going to work with this other team. Have you noticed having to change contractors versus that in Indianapolis as much?
Well, we do that, almost with every house. I've got one contractor. If I can put him in a house by himself, I just let him go and he does the house. I've got another guy, it's just 2 or 3 guys, but he has supplement people that come in and help. I know I can put him on this mid-house and they'll get it done very quickly. The house that we're doing, that's the true entry-level house, then I've got a total set of guys there that are, for lack of a better term, they're really good people and they work hard, but they're what I call wages people. They're working for wages.
Yeah.
And so if they net it out, $20 an hour, $22 an hour, that's in their wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm.
On it. And it keeps them busy. And then it actually, I've had several of those over the years where I've improved them up to different properties by just kind of managing the quality they put in this house. Because they see my other house and I said, hey, I want the same quality here.
Yeah.
This is not, I'm not cutting anything out of this house. And I may do things a little different on the house, but I want the same. So yeah, you have to, if you're doing a $70,000 house, you probably can't hire a $50 an hour contractor and plumber.
Yeah.
So you've got to keep and one of the other flippers that I do business with, and we talk about this, and we've talked about this on all the shows with, some of my best friends are flippers, because they're like-minded and we're not competitors. I mean, we're really not. We may compete for the same house every once in a while,
mm-hmm.
and it becomes a joke when, when a Todd Roberts outbids me at a sheriff's sale on the house and say, are you an idiot? Did you not see the foundation falling in the back of that house? Oh God, I wasn't even in the back of the house. He said, neither was I, but
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we're friends, and we had drinks and snacks with 4 or 5 wholesalers last Monday night. We just get together, and it doesn't have to be about real estate.
Mm-hmm.
To see what's on your mind other than real estate. So, but it helps to have those guys on your side if you need a plumber in 2 days, if you need that in 2 days. So.
Yeah, I think the one thing I appreciate you, Dave, is like you, not only do you go to flip and you make a lot of money from it, but you try to figure out the neighborhood culture, right? Like, what I mean? When you start looking at a Irvington, and you're not just putting a house in Irvington or making profit from Irvington, like you're actually putting something that can benefit the community as a whole, right? Which is really something that, when I start looking at developments and things, I'm like, man, Dave was first in. Like, I look at the Cyria building, and now I hear about the development on the plaza. I'm like, man, Dave was first in there.
So
Well,
you got your tracker on there to follow him around and make sure that's I want to invest there. Yeah.
Well, you bring everybody involved. I mean, a great example is, is yesterday, one of the neighbors come to the high-end condo that we're doing, and she saw that and was kind of walking through, and I brought my 4 pieces of quartz that we were going to use. I said, help me pick one out. I said, this is, I'm struggling. What's somebody in this neighborhood going to buy? And she said, that's the one you need to go. So I said, okay, that's what we're doing. I mean, she's already emailed me twice. She said, hey, I've got a couple of friends that want to see the building when you're done. And so it's like, get the neighbors participating in what you're doing. And you can do that in every neighborhood. I do it as a security thing. Absolutely. Hey, if you see anybody here after 7 o'clock, I know my guys ain't working, call the police.
Yeah.
And so it's, the more you bring people into what you do, it's just more of a network that, I mean, I can't tell you how many, when you brought people in and say, hey, so-and-so down the street wants to sell their house.
Yeah.
And so, in my business and Sterling business and Brian business, you don't think about it, but everything matters.
It does.
Everything matters.
Yeah. All it takes is one connection that can change the game in any way. It can take one mistake to bring it down too.
Can change your world.
Yep. No, that's great. And that's literally what I was just going to point out too before I brought up my last question for you here, Dave, was basically like, if you talk to Dave any amount of time and you've heard it on all these shows and especially today too, of everything that he's kind of doing within his business, it's all about making connections, working with a contractor. He's going to go out and visit some job sites. He's going to talk to them, talk to the neighbors on the projects he's doing, being involved in the community. That goes a long way. And that's one of the reasons he's successful. And he's been doing it for 40 plus years, is he has an experience, but he knows that, like, hey, it is about connections. It's all about the relationships in this business. It's so very important. So don't take that, don't let that just kind of roll through your ear and out the other one. Like, make sure you kind of heed that, because that's great advice right there from him. So one last question I have for you, Dave, before we get out of here is, so if somebody, I want to go back to maybe that person that they're just starting getting flipping, or maybe they've done 1 or 2 deals and just kind of looking for that next one. So they're still getting used to it. What are maybe some good areas, some good neighborhoods that they can maybe try? They're not going for that home run or anything like that, but they just want to get their feet wet. What's a couple areas or a couple neighborhoods that you maybe would be good for them to focus on here in Indianapolis?
Well, I think probably the biggest thing you can tell people is, especially newbie, don't be the first in some of these neighborhoods. Don't let, because it looks too cheap, from a wholesaler at $50,000 or $60,000, you have to react quickly on these things. So that's why you need a contractor that you really can trust, that can give you a decent ballpark number. I memean, when we buy at sheriff's sales, we've got, on any house of 200 houses, we've got a 5-minute window in looking at the house, and we've got a 30-second decision making process on what we pay for it. So, and that just comes with experience in doing that kind of stuff. So, I mean, you can go on and on as far as the newbie that we're doing. One of the things that we'll probably be doing, if somebody has interest in it, they can reach out to me. We're probably going to do a 3-day boot camp at the end of July, maybe first week in August. And we'll have 2 days of intense lecturing and 1 day in the field looking at different various stages of flips. So if somebody wants to get into it, wants to hone their skills, then we'll be able to help them and provide some coaching.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's great. No, do me a favor real quick too, and plug your dinner with or what is it? Dinner with Dave? Is that what it's called?
Dinner and Deals with Dave.
There we go. So when is that, and how do they get to that?
That's the third Thursday of every month, and it's at my real estate office at Century 21 Sheets, which is 4929 East 96. I will provide dinner of some kind, and we basically spend an hour and a half to 2 hours going over my specific projects, and then talking a little bit about what I'm seeing in the marketplace happening on the flips and what we're looking at. So we analyze 3 different deals every week, and we have to start at the finish, and the people get to see the results at the end.
So awesome stuff.
I'll tell you what, Dave, man, I think we should send out the ones that are recorded to people if they had wanted some additional information. I think that's some good information to people.
Yeah, well, just like the stuff we talked about today, we spent 30 minutes going over it at the meeting because I really thought it was important to get people refocused and get back in the marketplace.
Yeah. So no, great stuff. Really appreciate it, Dave. Awesome stuff. Sterling, thanks a lot for joining us again as well. And that's a wrap for this episode. Hopefully you've enjoyed these just last few episodes that we've done. The Real Talk crew, talking just about our specialties. If you have any ideas of like, hey, I wish they would cover this, or I wish they would go over this, or they need to talk about this a little bit more, let us know. Definitely reach out to me at brian@simplewholesaling.com, or hit any one of us up on social media on Facebook. We'd love to connect with you, and hopefully we can help you out in any way that we can. So with that, that's a wrap. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you.